Today I'm going to show you how to fit text around this hat band. But first I'm going to show you two different ways it could be done and the pros and cons and nuances of each method. The first method would be to add an envelope which lets me have very fine control over the 3D appearance of the shape. The drawback is that I lose my own screen text editing capability. If I try to edit this, I can make some changes in this dialog box, but I cannot do things like change the letter spacing. And if I type text that is longer than the shape, it gets scaled to fit. If I make it shorter, it doesn't get wider. The other method is fit text to path. It's different because I cannot just warp the letters, and their angle is determined by this vertical alignment setting. The advantage of this method is I do retain on-screen text editing capability. So I can do things like adjust letter spacing and such. And I can use the node tool to adjust individual letter handles to affect letter spacing and position. One weird thing about this is if I grab a handle and drag, I can only move it along the path. Whereas if I use the arrow keys, I can move it up and down and sideways. And if I drag, it maintains that position along the path. But this whole thing is a compound object composed of two different objects, which affect how it turns out. And when I first click on it, I have the compound object selected, which I can scale. But if I click on it again, I select either the artistic text or the control curve, which means that I cannot click on the compound object again to rotate it. If I wanted to rotate that, I have to use the transformation dialog box to rotate the whole thing. And when I do that, it does not rotate the letter's vertical orientation. Whereas I can rotate an envelope all I want, and it rotates the whole thing normally. I can also do things like add perspective to an envelope, but I can't add a perspective to text on path. And if I select the artistic text object itself, I can't rotate that either. I can skew it, but it stays on the curve. And if I select the control curve, I can rotate that and skew it and scale it. But the text does not scale with the path. The text always just fits the path. So my path generally always has to be longer than the text. So modifying the path does not change the text properties. It just changes the text position a little bit. And I can use the node tool to change the path to whatever I want, and the text will follow. So text on a path is more versatile when it comes to editing either the text or the path independently. But the envelope is more dynamic when it comes to realistic 3D effects. When it comes to plasma cutting, it is nice to be able to adjust the spacing between the letters, especially if we wanted to make this a pattern to use for other projects with different texts, where we can enter whatever text we want and space it properly. But to do that, we cannot have the control curve in the middle of the drawing, or else it would try to cut that. So what we do is select the compound object, move that to the guide layer, and then select the text object and move that to our drawing layer. So now the control curve will not export to DXF or print if we printed this out. Either way, it's nice to be able to save either of these patterns as a template, so we could come change the text to whatever we want whenever necessary. Although for plasma cutting, we usually end up having to break the text apart and do a little trimming and bridging, at which point the text is no longer editable. So that if we don't save a template, we'd have to start all over every time we wanted some new text. Or we could just do all our text designing on the guide layer and copy the text object to a drawing layer to do the trimming and bridging. And then we always have a copy of the text template on the guide layer, which remains editable text. And just copy to a drawing layer anytime you want. So for this project, I'm going to use text on a path. First I need the text. Make that area rounded. And I want the height of the main letters to be about right. And that looks good. But before I go any further, I'm going to adjust the spacing between the T and the R and the E and the W a little bit. Get the node tool, select those and arrow to the right, and get these and arrow to the right. And this is 68 points. I'm going to make D about 58 points. This S about 63 points. And move that over and up. And move these up. That looks pretty good. Well, A needs to move over. And now we need a path to fit to. If I look at this path, it's composed of separate curved segments. So I would have to shift select all those segments, combine, and get the node tool and join, join, join to make a continuous curve. And it won't hurt to delete these extra nodes here to make it simpler and smoother. But if you notice, this node is a little bigger than this one, which means this is the start node. So that if I fit this text like that, it starts at the wrong place, backwards. So I need to select that and get the node tool and reverse the curve direction to start here. Now, one thing I want to do before I fit this text to this path is make a copy of that path. Hit the plus key. So if I have to edit that path, the original curve will still be there. And I can put my control curve on the guide layer so that it won't plot to the DXF. So I will select the copy and the text and fit text to path. And then select this alignment method and drag that text slightly off the path. And now I want to edit the control curve to shift this end of the text into a better position. I'm going to scale that control curve and skew it. get the S about where I want it. And I'm going to drag that curve a little bit. Rotate it a little bit. And then get the text and skew it a little bit. And adjust the path as necessary. Convert to curves and do my trimming and bridging if necessary. And here, these curves could actually be connected and edited a little bit to more closely follow that text, and I think it would look a little better. I'm not going to do that now. And when zoomed out, it still looks a little off, so I'm going to skew that a little bit. And that's what's hard about fit text to path, is when you need the verticality of the letters to line up with other features. That's where using the envelope tool can yield better results. I might make another video and do this with envelopes, because it just occurred to me that it might be easier to save an envelope preset to fit arbitrary text like this into a space like that. As you can see, fit text to path does not give us perfect perspective alignment here. Usually fit text to path is much easier to use than that and comes out better. This might be one of those cases where envelope is worth trying. I'll do that later.